Imagine this: a small town in the Midwest, quiet and God-fearing. A place where neighbors greet each other by name and front porches host lemonade on summer nights. In this town, a high school teacher, well-liked, deeply moral, believes she must shield her students from distressing truths. She edits history to soften its cruelties, avoids challenging literature, and punishes critical questions under the guise of maintaining order and respect. Her intention? To protect them, to keep their minds clean, to spare them discomfort. 10 years later, some of those students grow up unable to recognize systemic injustice, others parrot hollow patriotism, and a few, armed with ignorance, become agents of the very violence they were supposed to be spared from. What if protection, when rooted in fear, becomes poison? What if our desire to do good is the camouflage for control, avoidance, even cowardice? Here lies the paradox, that beneath the halo of good intentions, we often hide the seeds of destruction. The phrase, "the road to hell is paved with good intentions," is not a warning against malice. It is a chilling critique of unconscious virtue. We rarely question the source of our morality. Is it love, or is it fear masquerading as kindness? Is it wisdom or just obedience to inherited dogma? This is where things begin to unravel. Because intention, no matter how sincere, is not absolution. A mother who smothers her child with overprotection until he cannot breathe might say she's acting out of love. But what if her love is a disguised fear of loss, of failure, of inadequacy? What if her love is only love for herself? The real horror is this: most cruelty is committed not by villains, but by those convinced they are righteous. No one burns witches, starts wars, censors truth, or builds ideological prisons thinking they are evil. They believe they are saving the world. History is littered with moral purists whose utopias became gulags. From religious crusaders to revolutionary idealists, their hearts were full of intentions. But hearts full of intention can blind the eyes of discernment. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That terror drives many to project their shadows onto others, crusading against imagined evils rather than confronting the chaos within. When we deny the darkness within ourselves, we become vulnerable to the delusion that our actions are purely good. And that is where danger begins. When help is divorced from humility, it becomes domination. When care lacks curiosity, it becomes suffocation. When compassion is unexamined, it can become control. Think of the humanitarian who believes democracy must be spread by the sword, the parent who imposes their dreams upon their child, the nonprofit that invades a culture to civilize it, but never listens. These people don't wake up wanting to cause harm, but harm follows them like a shadow, unnoticed. The danger lies not in doing wrong, but in being sure we are right. And that confidence, that moral intoxication, is what leads us to build the gates of hell with our own hands. Each brick a good deed, each step a noble cause. And what's worse, we feel good doing it, because when you feel like the hero of your story, it's hard to admit the story might be a lie. Let that sink in. So what then? If good intentions are not enough, if they can even be dangerous, what do we trust? What guides us when morality becomes a minefield? That's where we begin to turn inward. Next, we'll explore the psychology behind this paradox, the mental and emotional mechanics that cause well-meaning people to commit deeply harmful acts. It's not about condemnation, it's about confrontation of the self, of the shadow, of the stories we cling to when we're terrified of the truth. Because only by facing the unconscious can we begin to steer our intentions towards something deeper than righteousness, something closer to wisdom. He stands on the street corner with a clipboard, a smile stretched wide with evangelical zeal. He wants to save the world, one signature, one petition, one donated dollar at a time. He speaks of justice, fairness, and progress. But watch closely. Behind his eyes, there's something twitching, something desperate. A need not just to save others, but to matter, to be good, to be seen as good. And that's where the unconscious takes the wheel. This is the silent tyranny of the unconscious savior, the compulsion to help not because others are suffering, but because we cannot tolerate feeling powerless, invisible, or morally uncertain. We rush to fix what we cannot even understand. We project solutions onto people whose pain we haven't even listened to. And we tell ourselves it's because we care. But true care requires something we often lack: humility. The human psyche is a labyrinth of contradictions. We are driven by ideals, but also by wounds, by hopes, and by unresolved guilt. And sometimes, our noblest actions are fueled by the very darkness we claim to oppose. Consider this: the therapist who entered the field to heal others, but who hasn't yet confronted their own trauma. The social activist who fights injustice with unchecked rage, replicating the very violence they protest. Or the missionary who preaches salvation in a village whose language they don't even speak. It's not malevolence. It's the unconscious, unexamined pain masquerading as purpose. Arthur Schopenhauer once observed, "Compassion is the basis of morality, but compassion, real compassion, is not pity. It is not saviorism. It is not the rush to act simply because we cannot bear to feel discomfort. It is the ability to be with suffering without trying to annihilate it to soothe ourselves. Because often, when we try to fix others, we are really trying to fix the parts of ourselves that they remind us of. The alcoholic father we couldn't save, so we become life coaches. The chaos of our childhood, so we join movements to restore order. The shame we inherited, so we punish those who live freely. We're not helping them, we're helping our ghosts. Here lies the danger. When we serve others from a place of unconscious need, we don't see them, we use them. We turn people into projects. We reduce communities to hashtags. We instrumentalize suffering as a way to feel noble. We hijack someone else's tragedy to create our own identity. And the most sinister part? We don't even know we're doing it, because the story in our head sounds so pure. I'm making a difference. I'm being of service. I'm standing up for what's right. But who decides what's right? Have you asked them what they need? Or have you told them? Have you sat with their pain? Or did you offer solutions so you didn't have to feel it? Have you truly helped? Or did you just escape your own discomfort? Jean-Paul Sartre warned us, hell is other people, but what he meant was deeper than annoyance or conflict. He meant that the gaze of others, the way we define ourselves through their perception, becomes a prison. And in our desperation to be seen as good, we often become blind to the real impact of our actions. Because the truth is, good intentions don't always produce good outcomes. Sometimes they do the opposite. They infantilize, they overwrite, they colonize, they drown out the voices they claim to amplify. In our obsession with doing good, we forget to do no harm. So where do we go from here? We begin by asking the uncomfortable question: what are my intentions really rooted in? Do I want to help? Or do I want to be needed? Do I want to serve? Or do I want to control? Do I want to empower? Or do I want to perform my virtue for others? The answers to these questions are rarely clean, but they are necessary, because without them, we risk turning our unconscious needs into someone else's nightmare. And that is how the road to hell is not paved by monsters, but by those too afraid to look in the mirror. She holds a placard high above her head, screaming at the top of her lungs in the name of justice. Beside her, another holds a sign that reads, "Silence is violence." But behind her chant, behind her fury, there is a trembling, a crack in the voice, not from exhaustion, but from desperation. She doesn't just want to be heard. She wants the world to bend now, not tomorrow, not gradually, now. And if it must burn for that to happen, so be it. What began as idealism has curdled into dogma. And dogma, when weaponized, becomes another form of tyranny. We must ask, when does virtue become violence? Not in the obvious ways, not in the ways that history books clearly identify, but in quieter, insidious forms: social coercion, moral absolutism, public shaming, intellectual silencing. In the name of progress, we destroy nuance. In the name of justice, we crush dissent. In the name of inclusion, we exile those who think differently. We call it accountability, but often it is vengeance in disguise. And the terrifying part? Feels good, righteous, cleansing. But the moment we begin to enjoy punishment, we've left the territory of morality. We've crossed into moral sadism. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his relentless dissection of virtue, once wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." And yet, time and again, we do. Because when our identity is built upon being the good one, the just one, the enlightened one, any threat to that identity must be eliminated, not argued with, not understood, but destroyed. It's not justice we seek in those moments. It's self-preservation. This is the violence of virtue, the need to annihilate ambiguity, the inability to sit with complexity, the addiction to moral certainty, because complexity threatens our moral high ground. It reminds us that truth is layered, that people are flawed, that we ourselves are not immune to contradiction. And that is unbearable. So instead, we build binary worlds. Heroes and villains, oppressed and oppressors, right and wrong, with no in-between. And we punish anyone who doesn't conform to this moral architecture. We shame them, cancel them, dehumanize them, all while telling ourselves we're doing what's necessary. But moral absolutism is the death of conversation. And conversation is the lifeblood of understanding. When we claim to fight for justice but shut down every voice but our own, we are not building a better world, we are building an ideological echo chamber. One that echoes louder and louder until it becomes deafening and dangerous. We forget that true virtue does not require domination. It requires dialogue. It requires the strength to remain curious in the face of offense. It requires the maturity to hold opposing truths in tension without collapsing into rage. But rage feels good. It gives us a sense of control in a chaotic world. It fuels our sense of purpose. And in a society addicted to speed and spectacle, rage gets rewarded. So we ride it like a wave, until that wave becomes a tsunami, until we wake up and realize we have destroyed the very thing we were trying to protect: each other. This is not a condemnation of activism. It is a warning against fanaticism, against the kind of blind virtue that seeks purity instead of progress. Because purity has no room for people. People are messy. They contradict themselves. They learn slowly. They get things wrong. And if your morality cannot make room for that, then it is not moral. It is mechanical. What then does real virtue look like? It looks like restraint, like listening, like the courage to question your own side, like the willingness to forgive without forgetting. And most of all, it looks like the humility to recognize that even your best intentions can be dangerous. Because when we begin to see virtue as a weapon, we stop asking why we are fighting. And without that question, we are already lost. A city gleams under artificial sunlight. Streets are clean, crime is non-existent, and every citizen wears a fixed smile. Cameras blink from every corner. Order has replaced chaos. Equality has replaced ambition. Safety has replaced freedom. You are not hungry. You are not in pain. But you are not free. You are watched. Your thoughts are monitored. Your speech is filtered. Your dissent is pathologized. You are a number in a system designed for your own good. Welcome to utopia, the final destination of unchecked good intentions. The dream of a perfect society has haunted humanity for centuries. From Plato's Republic to Marx's classless commune, we've fantasized about harmony, justice, and equality. But over and over again, those dreams curdled into authoritarianism, surveillance, and genocide. Because when good intentions become blueprints for human behavior, individuality becomes a threat. Aldous Huxley warned us in Brave New World that the real danger was not pain, but pleasure without meaning. Happiness, he wrote, is never grand. It is manageable, docile, and apolitical. It is achieved not through growth, but through sedation. In Huxley's dystopia, suffering was eliminated not by solving it, but by dulling consciousness. And that is precisely how many modern ideologies operate. We try to build heaven on earth by removing discomfort, by sanitizing language, regulating thought, criminalizing emotion, all under the banner of protection. We censor for peace. We medicate for productivity. We flatten complexity for unity. But what we end up with is not heaven. It is the quiet horror of conformity. And it starts innocently enough. A rule to protect the vulnerable. Policy to prevent offense. A law to ensure fairness. Each decision seems harmless, benevolent even, but over time the cumulative effect is chilling. A society in which no one dares to speak freely, feel deeply, or think differently. Why? Because someone somewhere might be harmed. But in trying to remove all harm, we remove the very conditions for growth. Pain is not the enemy of progress, it is its crucible. Without struggle, there is no transformation. Without offense, no truth. Without conflict, no resolution. When a society prioritizes safety over truth, it breeds cowardice. When it prizes collective harmony over individual thought, it breeds mediocrity. And when it enforces moral perfection, it breeds fear. The fear of being wrong. The fear of standing out. The fear of becoming the enemy. Utopian thinking often begins with noble motives. Eliminate suffering, ensure justice, protect the vulnerable. But it ends by eliminating the individual, the very soul of humanity. Because individuality is messy, contradicts itself. It resists simplification, and it refuses to conform. But without it, there is no innovation, no art, no revolution, no real change, only a dull, numbing sameness. The most dangerous systems are not led by sadists, but by engineers of virtue, people who genuinely believe they are building paradise. But a paradise without conflict is a prison, and a world without suffering is a lie. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once wrote, "What gives light must endure burning. In our desperation to remove the burn, we extinguish the light. We flatten the human spirit in the name of social progress, and then wonder why everything feels lifeless, anxious, and false." Real progress does not come from perfect systems. It comes from flawed people who are free to make mistakes and free to learn from them. So the next time someone tells you their system will fix everything, save everyone, or end all suffering, ask them this: at what cost? And who decides what good looks like? Because if they cannot tolerate complexity, they will eventually come for you. Not because you are evil, but because you won't fit. And in a utopia, not fitting is the ultimate crime. She scrolls through her feed, heart racing with indignation. Another politician caught lying. Another video of injustice. Another trending hashtag. She reposts furiously, adds her commentary, and waits. Not for a solution, but for affirmation. The likes come. The agreement flows in. She is on the right side of history, or so she believes. This is the age of moral narcissism, the seductive belief that being right is more important than being effective, that performing virtue is more valuable than practicing wisdom. We have confused conviction with clarity. We have replaced depth with outrage. And behind so many of our good intentions lies a hidden addiction. The need to be seen as good. Not to do good, but to appear good, to feel good. And that distinction is everything. The philosopher Iris Murdoch once wrote, "The humble man, because he sees himself as he is, can accept others. But humility has no place in the age of curated identities. Online, we are avatars of our best selves, flawless, informed, unyielding. We do not ask questions, we deliver proclamations. We do not doubt, we declare. And why? Because the collapse of religion, tradition, and shared narratives has left a void. In that vacuum, many have made a new church out of ideology. Politics has become theology. Activism has become sacrament. Social media, the altar. And virtue signaling, the liturgy. But here's the danger. When morality becomes a brand, truth becomes irrelevant. All that matters is alignment. All that matters is that we're on the team. And once we are, anything goes. Cruelty is excused. Hypocrisy is ignored. Dehumanization is celebrated. All in the name of justice, truth, or the greater good. We are no longer seeking solutions, we're protecting identities. We don't listen to learn, we listen to confirm. We don't argue to understand, we argue to win. We measure our morality by how loudly we oppose the other side, not by how deeply we understand our own. And the worst part? We feel morally superior for it. That is the trap of moral narcissism. Feels like integrity, feels like righteousness, but it is, at its core, an ego project. It's about feeling morally tall by making others seem morally small. And it's not limited to any political leaning. It exists on the left, on the right, in religious groups, in secular movements. It is a human flaw, not a partisan one. Because the desire to be good is powerful. But the desire to be seen as good, that's intoxicating. And like any addiction, it escalates. We start by posting thoughtful takes, then edgier takes, then outrage, then condemnation, then purity tests. Before long, we're not advocating, we're attacking. We're not healing, we're humiliating. We're not improving society, we're tearing at its fabric, convinced we're saving it. And all the while, we insist, but my heart is in the right place. Intentions, again. But intentions without introspection are just masks for ego. So what do? We start by recognizing that being right isn't enough. In fact, being certain we are right is often a sign we're not thinking clearly. The world is too complex for moral absolutism. People are too layered for ideological purity. We must return to humility, not performative but radical. The kind that allows you to say, I don't know. The kind that invites contradiction. The kind that is more concerned with understanding than with being understood. We must learn to let go of the performance of goodness in order to pursue the practice of wisdom. Because wisdom is slow, doubts, questions its own assumptions. It is quiet where narcissism is loud. It requires us to stop looking in the mirror and start looking out the window. We must ask, am I helping or just displaying? Am I curious or just angry? Am I growing or just yelling louder than before? Only then can our good intentions begin to mature into something real. Something that doesn't burn the world down just to prove it cares. A man walks past a homeless woman on a bitter winter evening. He feels the tug of guilt, then rationalization. She'll just use it for drugs. Someone else will help her. I don't have time. But something compels him. He kneels, hands her a sandwich, no speech, no performance, no camera. Just one human seeing another. No applause follows. No post goes viral. No moral badge earned. But something real just happened. In a world obsessed with being seen doing good, there's something quietly revolutionary about doing good without being seen. This is the movement from intention to integrity. Integrity doesn't scream. It doesn't seek a platform. It doesn't decorate itself in slogans or demand an audience. It operates in silence, in subtlety. It listens before it speaks. It questions itself before it questions others. And most of all, it acts from wholeness. Not guilt, not ego, not fear, not performance. But here's the truth few want to hear. Doing good is not easy. It's not clean. And it's not fast. Real good, the kind that changes lives and transforms communities, often happens in the shadows. It's messy. It requires sacrifice without certainty. It demands presence over applause. It risks misunderstanding. Sometimes even fails. But it leaves something sacred behind, dignity. For the one helped, and for the one helping. A philosophy professor once said, "The good is what preserves the possibility of choice." And that is the essence of integrity. It creates space. It empowers rather than controls. It helps without erasing, questions without condemning. Where good intentions often seek to save or fix, integrity asks, what does this person actually need? It doesn't assume. It doesn't impose. It collaborates. It doesn't start from superiority. It starts from humility. And this is what Jean Vanier, founder of the L'Archi communities, understood so deeply. Working with those society deemed less than, he realized. We are not called to do extraordinary things, but to do ordinary things with extraordinary love. That love, unconditional, unflashy, quietly enduring, is the antidote to moral vanity. Because the road to hell is not paved with fire and brimstone. It is paved with unchecked self-righteousness, unquestioned assumptions, and the refusal to sit with complexity. It is built by people who want to do good but not change themselves. It is traveled by those who want to be seen as good, but refuse to see their own blind spots. To get off that road, we don't need more outrage. We need more introspection, more slowness, more listening, more willingness to ask, what are my motives? What impact am I having, really? Am I open to being wrong? Integrity doesn't mean getting it right all the time. It means being willing to wrestle with the uncomfortable truth that sometimes we don't know what good looks like. Sometimes we need to listen more than we act. Sometimes the best thing we can do is not step in, because someone else's liberation isn't ours to script. And that's okay, because the real work of doing good isn't about grand gestures. It's about creating spaces where people can be fully, freely, and without fear. That is the real measure of morality. Not whether we act with good intentions, but whether our actions allow others to become more fully themselves. Not whether we shine, but whether we help others find their own light. And that requires something more than virtue. It requires courage. Courage to face ourselves. Courage to dismantle the ego wrapped in goodness. Courage to walk slowly, humbly, and honestly, knowing that we will stumble but continuing anyway. Because in the end, good intentions are just the beginning. The real question is, are you willing to do the work that goodness requires? If not, get off the road. Because that road, as we've seen, is already crowded with the wreckage of those who meant well, but never meant deeply.